Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Creative Launch. My name is Matt Bowersox with Furman Graduate Studies. Once again, I'm joined by Hank Richardson, the Creative Director at the Miami Ad School and Program Coordinator for the MASD program at Furman. Also joining us today is Laura McMullen. She's a branded environment designer at Perkins & Will. Laura, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're up to professionally right now?
So like you said, I'm a branded environments designer at Perkins & Will, and pretty much that is, a little bit of everything. We pretty much just tell stories for the clients. And so a lot of the time, the medium for that is graphic design. But we're a small team at a larger architecture firm. So that really means working with structural engineers and architects, and then mainly the client to hear their concerns and hear what their agenda is for a space. So a lot of times it will be graphic, but the allure of the job for me initially was that what I learned graphically in school could be translated to the built environment. So whether that's working with clear acrylic or wood and three-dimensionalizing a design, that's kind of where the magic starts to happen when you get these different layers of material and meaning. So that to me is kind of where I'm at professionally, and I've been there now since September 2018. So it's been my first job outside of school.
Awesome. Sounds like you're going strong there. So that's great.
Yeah.
So you got started pretty early, as far as I understand, in design thinking and knowing that you wanted to pursue a creative path. Can you talk a little bit about where you started and what your journey has been since then?
Yeah, so, I guess initially as a little girl, I was always drawing my own birthday cards for people. Just little things like flowers or a cake or something really basic. But I was pretty lucky to be able to go middle with a photography program and an actually a dark room. So my photography teacher kind of told me that I had an eye for composition and that I should keep pursuing that if I was interested in creativity. And so my right brain has always been pretty strong. So creatively, that kind of just blossomed into a passion for photography. And so I continued to pursue that in high school. And then I kind of realized that it wasn't just photography that I loved. It was more composition and the meaning behind something. I always loved naming my photos, like trying to assign a meaning and a story to something. So then looking at colleges, I knew I also loved business because I had a really good accounting teacher, and he was like, you have this part of your brain too. So I was like, oh, okay, well maybe I should exercise the left and the right brain. Because to this day, calculus might have been my favorite class I've ever taken, like over any art class, which is pretty strange to me. But anyways, so I was looking at colleges and looked down them all across the country and met with both the business departments and the art departments. And, for lack of a better way to say this, if the business department was too analytical, I kind of cut that. Or if the art department was too artsy, kind of cut that. I really liked the practical nature of art and the business of art, not in managing galleries, but in communicating. So then I met with Ross McLean at Furman, and he mentioned a guy named Hank in Portfolio Center, which is now Miami Ad School. And I looked it up, and then I remember the old website had this section of where the grads are now in their jobs. And I was just like, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is like big dogs in a creative world. And so really I picked Furman because of the connection to Portfolio Center. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that seems to have worked out for you.
Yeah. Well, and then I also studied photography at Furman, but really I wanted to keep something creative for myself, for it to just be a hobby. So that's photography for me. And then design and design thinking, which is really where the magic is to me, is what I'm pursuing in career.
So do you still do photography a lot?
I do, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's knowing a little bit more about your story and reading what you have told me about your experience at Furman and Miami Ad School. It seems like you had a really ambitious approach because you are somebody who's both seems to be a left brain and a right brain person. Not everybody can claim that, but you seem to have that perspective where you have skills on both your right and left brain. You had planned to double major at Furman in business and design, which you did. And while these are two seemingly, for a lot of people, seemingly different majors, I think ultimately, I think it was for you as a really pragmatic decision in a lot of ways. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the symbiotic relationship that exists between a business mindset and design thinking.
Yeah, so to me, design thinking is a little bit one of these buzzwords, right? It kind of birthed out of the creative field, but really, design thinking is applied to any strategy. Like the strategy in the business world, even if you're thinking about a spreadsheet and what your goal for the next quarter is, like you need to think about that strategically and you need to design that plan for your business model. So all of that is design thinking. So a great business plan is the product of design thinking, just as a really cool graphic that's like a vinyl print on the wall is the product of design thinking as well. So really it's just this way of thinking about it. And I guess, I don't know how I came to this conclusion so early. I mean, I put a lot of effort in and I am very ambitious. So I knew I wanted to develop both sides of my brain more. And I speak this way because my mom's a psychologist. And so all my science fair projects are about the left and the right brain in correlation to right-handed and left-handed people. And so I'm left-handed. So I knew that there was this interesting correlation and that people throughout history, if they're left-handed, but also develop their left brain, they achieve more in life. That's kind of the outcome. So I was like, I want to be that. So I just kind of started to look at design thinking as a way to do anything. Like even when I clean my closet, I'm very ADD and disorganized. So when I clean my closet, I have to be like, okay, why am I doing it this time? Is it going to be color coded? No, that doesn't really work for me. So even as something as simple as that, you kind of have to think about what the problem is, the priority of solutions, and then go from there. And it's kind of like an equation at that point.
Right. And again, one of the things I see in business, and when we look at businesses that are asking for students from Furman, one of the consistent top of mind things for most businesses, they want critical thinkers. They want people who can think critically. And I think critical thinking is very closely associated with design thinking because you have to think outside the box. You have to come up with creative solutions to complex problems. So yeah, I think that I'm glad to know that you've been prepared thus far in your pursuit. Now, I know also there are some ways where the two of those, business thinking and design thinking, don't always play well together. I know personally that I've had some issues where, I want to achieve something artistically, but then also there's these business requirements and deadlines and all these things I have to think about. How did you balance the coming through the Miami Ad School? Obviously, they put a lot of things on your plate, and Furman obviously puts a lot of stuff on your plate. How did you learn to balance the artistic side and the business side, and really make those two work together?
So really for me, it kind of comes back to this equation. So like I said, I'm kind of scatterbrained and I can be very ADD. So when you start a project at Portfolio Center or Miami Ad School, really you pick everything. So your target market, your design goal, what the solution is going to be. So if it's packaging, you're redesigning for a certain purpose. Well, you are in control of picking what the biggest problem is and what you're trying to solve. But in the real world, that's given to you. And then even more, there are different constraints, like where you're going to get a material, how much the material is going to cost, how much a company is willing to pay you to do this, a material that they want to use or haven't used in the past. It's just, and then even more now working with Atlanta public schools and Clayton County schools, they have specific vendors they like to use and they might be more expensive. So just working with that, while my creativity might be 100 miles in the sky of what I would like to see in there. Ideally, you kind of have to meet in the middle. You have to be realistic about it. And I'm still learning that. I will work with my boss, Keith, and my mentor at work, Meredith, and I give them these amazing ideas deemed by them. And it's like, okay, well, let's make that actually happen. So when it comes to actually happening, it's a very different story. And that's the difference between just being a loosey-goosey artist and being a designer, really, because you design for your client. And if it isn't what they are going to pay you for, like, it really doesn't matter.
Always designing with the audience in mind, and always
Yeah.
client, in this case, the client in mind. We're learning about that right now in one of the classes I'm taking in this program in rhetoric. So it's all about the rhetoric. You got the audience, you got the speaker, you got the audience, and you have the message. So connecting all those three we've been learning about how to do that. Hank,
It's amazing in school to be able to practice this outside the box, like outside the box thinking. You have to do that to exercise that muscle. But it's interesting to layer on top of that when you actually get out and are working for someone else or for yourself, that you have a client and you kind of have to rein that in a little bit, but it's not like you'd be okay if you just started out in school reined in, if that makes sense. Like, you have to go far and far and far beyond and design the crazy things that might cost, like, who even knows how much? The material might not even exist to create this beautiful rendering, right? But you have to think that way in order to then give innovative ideas to a client with constraints on them.
mm-hmm. Hank, as the program coordinator for the MASD program, what are some ways that you bring this to the classroom? What are ways that you plan to inspire students to utilize design thinking in a business context?
Well, I think designs it's a mix of craft, of science, storytelling. It's a mix of propaganda, philosophy, and it's about purpose, and it's about vision, and it's certainly, as Laura indicates, about strategy. But it's not just for the artful side, that is not for the world of design, but it's for the design of the world. Because I think that's what designers do. What she's out doing, she's shaping the landscape by bringing, her brands to life internally through experiential design. And she aligns working with companies with their purpose. And that ultimately, like in the high school that she created, it's creating social change just by the work that she's enforcing out there. And I think as a designer, you have an opportunity to communicate messages to the world through every medium that's out there, from branding to packaging, to architecture, to interiors, to experiential work, information, product design. Everything you touch, or read, or experience, it's got to be designed. It's magical, and I think it's magical. And magic always comes from believing.
And Hank, one thing you brought up that I think is really important is the communication aspect of design, because that is one place where design and business, I think, also really meet, is the ability to communicate and creatively communicate in such a way that you can fully communicate and translate ideas from one party to another. And in the case of business, obviously, translate a business goal to its employees, or translate a business's product to its consumers. So that is one way that, I'm as a marketing person, somebody with the history in marketing, as I'm taking these classes, this is the lens that I'm kind of looking through it with, is the marketing lens, and it's larger than that. Obviously, it's a much larger than that. But for me personally, that's the applications that I'm seeing in some of the classes that I'm taking. So that's
you're so right. I mean, I think one of the things you do is you use your empathy, and Laura just comes to the table with empathy and her storytelling capability to create how brands will interact with their, like she said, with their audiences. And you bring things to life through innovation and solutions that are innovative in their nature. So that's exactly right. And that's the context of business operates exactly that way. So no matter what you're creating, strategic thinking and systems design facilitate understanding, and you get that through, just like the rhetoric class that you're doing. It's amazing. I mean, at the very base of that, it deals with semiotic references and semantics, and semantic episodes are simply storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. It's and storytelling's been a big key thing for me, and that's how because I've always seen myself as kind of a storyteller, so that's what's applied to got me into this field from the get go. But that's enough about me. I want to get back to Laura real quick on something that she shared um, in her first initial letter to me. Laura, you had said that when you got to the Miami Ad School, and just not just at Miami Ad School, but when you've had interactions with other designers outside of the context of Furman, you felt like you were set apart a little bit. Can you talk about how maybe Furman prepared you to take on this role and some of the experiences you were able to translate from your experience at Furman over to Miami Ad School, which is now the MASD program, but at the time that you were in school, it was just a partnership between the Furman bachelor's degree and the Miami Ad School certificate. What are some ways that you were able to transfer from Furman to Miami Ad School, your skill set and your things that you've learned at Furman?
Yeah, so just right off the bat, most students from Furman are either, well, let's just go out and say they're mainly art majors that then decide to go to Miami Ad School at Upper Philo Center. Now, that being said, there some of my friends like a political science and then some from business or communications. But basically, you learn a lot in the Furman art department about discipline. Like, if your craft is not good, McLean will dock an entire letter grade. Like, that seems dramatic, but that's really important to have the discipline to do that, because you learn not only craft itself, but then the time it takes to do something. You can't wait till the last minute, which I apparently never learned. I was always like waiting till the last minute and then being punished for it and all that. So some people never learn, some people learn a little. I'm somewhere on that spectrum. But that being said, having also the business degree from Furman, I think then set me apart more than just being a Furman student, because, they taught the importance in the business block of getting there on time, looking presentable. We wore business attire or business casual every single day, how to present, how to talk about something, how to have a general knowledge so you can actually hold your own in a conversation. So that really combined with the creativity and discipline learned in the art department kind of created this special sauce. I like to say it was like a secret sauce. So, the Furman students at the grad program, being one, it's a little biased to say, but I feel like everyone thought we had a little bit of a leg up, because we do have that amazing Furman education. And the fact that the school is so rigorous and you have to try hard at every class, even if you don't care about that class. If you don't show up for class, you're going to get an email from your teacher because there's maybe 12 of you in the classroom, or 20 or whatever. So that combined with the business, I think, kind of allowed me to talk about my work in a way that communicated clearly to others. So, I may have spent 16 hours on a project outside the classroom, but I come into the classroom and they don't care how long I spent on it. They don't care about the research I went through. I'm there to present my findings and my progress from the week. And you need to be able to do that and talk about it. Otherwise, you're going to lose your audience.
Hank, as a major player at Miami Ad School, what's been your experience seeing Furman students come into your programs and your classrooms, and what's been your experience noticing how they interact differently from maybe people who are not coming from a college, or maybe from even from a Furman background?
Their wide thinking capability, they have an understanding of design really as a verb when they come in, and they're looking for some sense of how to make that a noun. And we turn right around and make it a verb all over again and sort of sharpen that skill set. When they come from Furman, I think I would use the word story, sympathy, empathy, play, meaning. These are the things that I think that they bring from Furman, and it's a wide scope, whether you like Laura coming from the business background, or from someone from the philosophy department, the communications department, the English department. There is a commonality that runs through the university that really is an expression of wide thinking. And that is invaluable in a context of what change needs to be. And Laura comes in asking why, and I should say she comes in asking why not when you give her a problem. And that's what she brings in, I really do believe, from Furman University, the ability to do that.
Well, my final question for you, Laura, to wrap everything up. What if you would be able to talk to anybody from that's considering enrolling in the MASD program, what would be your recommendations for that?
Kind of twofold. If someone is already decided that they'd like to be in it and just looking for advice, my advice would be make sure you give everything double the amount of time you feel like you should. Because even if you are bad with time management, the reality is your brain isn't technically developed yet, and you don't, well, this is given if you're coming right from college, and you don't know how long something's going to take you. It's a new task, right? And you should give everything to it, 110%. But if it's someone deciding about whether they want to go into the program, I would say it's more of a dig into yourself and ask, like, what excites you? If you're going to go online and read an article, what's that article going to be? And if it's not designed, that doesn't mean the program isn't for you. It means that if you're reading this article and you find yourself dissecting, or like Hank said, asking why not, like no matter what I'm reading, whether it be something about the stock market or science, like I always find my brain thinking, well, why isn't it done this way? What's another way it could be done? Like if your brain is constantly trying to get to something else from reading something, like that's a good indicator that you should practice design thinking and become kind of well-versed at it. And whether that means you're a graphic designer or a storyteller or a strategist, like it's all the same. But if your brain is sitting there questioning why not and kind of wanting to take it a step further, then yeah, I think design thinking and this program is probably what's going to help your brain get.
Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your unique insight. Hank, thank you again for joining me as well. We appreciate everybody joining us today and watching the Creative Launch. Once again, if you'd like to know more about the Master of Arts in Strategic Design at Furman, feel free to visit furman.edu/MASD. We'll look forward to seeing you later. Bye-bye.